Hello there, Evie here. Okay, this really isn't a video I want to have to make because, I mean, for a start, I've got better things to do for the channel than have to pause proceedings with reviews with cases like the RVZ03, which is the reason I'm having to pause proceedings with videos or proper videos for this channel, and we'll get onto that in a second. First thing before we continue is that this is very much a talking head video. You're just going to be seeing me, maybe a few visuals thrown in to help you understand or help me bring across to you my thoughts and of what I'm doing and what I'm explaining, and the problems and solutions that I'm trying to describe. But I should be able to do the majority of that by talking, so you should, for all intents and purposes, be able to minimize this video and listen to it in the background while I discuss the situation and the problems. So onto the actual issue itself. Right, when I was doing the review of the RVZ03 Silverstone case, I was just about to do the installation of the graphics card into this tray, which you'll see close-ups of now. Now, to install this into the tray, you need to align the graphics card, slot it into position, and hunky-dory, there you go. But not quite so simple. Actually, just before I move on from the tray, which I'm going to do now, this tray is actually pretty much as innovative as it gets for components inside of a PC or inside a PC. It has three purposes: one, to hold a graphics card; two, to store three 2.5-inch drives. Really cool. And 4, to direct airflow through to the exhaust airflow ventilation points to the back of the case predominantly, and then there's the sort of bottom or rear of the case depending on how you have the case mounted. So moving on from that, to be able to fix the graphics card to that tray or to that panel, it has an angled PCB point so that it can create the rotation from horizontal to vertical, which you need to install in this case. You need to use, to connect them two together, a PCI Express extender, which is provided by Silverstone. Now, this PCI Express extender is the culprit of the problems. So the issue with this is that once you've installed it into the graphics card, there's no problem, you slot it in, absolutely fine. But if you try to pull it out away from the graphics card, then it catches on the notch of the graphics card to the back. So can you see this notch at the back here? You'll have close-ups. There's a notch to the back here, and because there's not much tolerance within this style of connector, then it's prone to rotating towards it, and then it will really leverage down on that back end piece, which is capped off, and snap the cap off, and could take some PCI Express lanes with it, which then renders it completely useless in effect. Although if you want to use it for other builds for some reason with a 4X or an 8X, I don't know. But anyway, so it renders it basically useless because it catches onto that notch. And in all actuality, there is a bit more grip to the back than the front, so it is more likely to rotate on that point. And generally, because of its nature, having the freedom to be able to rotate when you pull it out, and the amount of grip that's used, because there is quite a lot of grip on all these lanes to clamp down onto the contact points of the PCI Express slot or notch on the graphics card, it is going to come out at an angle quite likely, and then cause the back end to snap. Now, there's a few reasons as to why I feel this is bad decision making on Silverstone's part and bad design on Silverstone's part, and we'll get into that now. So first things first, not the biggest issue, but the plastic that is used to make this connector is very cheap. Can you hear this? Not the sound of a quality piece of plastic. Now I'm just going to pause myself there. It would appear that the plastic used for this connector, the Silverstone PCI Express 16X extender connector, is the same style of plastic used on most other connectors on motherboards. So it would just appear that the plastic isn't really suitable for this use case of such a versatile and sort of a dynamic, perhaps slot in, slot out style of connection. So yeah, that's all I really want to say to add to this. So the point is sort of half there, but it would just appear that it's not suitable for the application, not necessarily that the plastic itself is not up to standard. But that's not really the big problem. The problem number one, I feel, is that the design. There's a style of this connector at the top itself. It's made by a company called Lotes, which is a Taiwanese company who manufacture all sorts of connectors. They go from components like this all the way to CPU sockets and that sort of thing. A very broad, wide-ranging manufacturing company of all sorts of connectors for systems. Now, I'm not saying it's their fault at all. In fact, they're the last person or last party is whose fault this is. In fact, I feel that Silverstone chose probably one of the worst connectors that the Lotes manufacture to be part of this piece. Because it has a blocked off cap at the end, and because the nature of its application, you can expect there to be some rotation along that point, and they would have discovered this problem had they quality controlled this product or this connector properly. If they did their due diligence, they would have understood that, you know, quite a few times if somebody's just going to randomly pull it off, it's going to catch on the back and it's going to rip that to shreds. And yeah, so there are many different style of connectors they could have chosen other than this. The biggest problem of this is because it has a closed off back, it can catch on that notch. If there was no closed off back, it wouldn't have that problem. It would have been good if they had some sort of free area at the back and maybe had a clip similar to the motherboard or the PCI Express slots on the mini ITX board I have in this Asus Z170 Gaming Pro Gaming motherboard that I have in here, the mini ITX motherboard. It has a sideward style latch connector, which is actually a really good style connector for this use. I haven't actually checked if it's got a cap on the end. If it does or doesn't though, it could be removed or not, if it does or doesn't exist for this style of connector. So point one, really bad style of connector. Minor point, which was the previous point, which I'm not really going to regard, is this the cheapness of the plastic and how brittle it is, and how if you were to accidentally get into this situation, it's more likely to snap than not because of the compound of the plastic used. And finally, my third point that I feel is one of the most prominent points as to why this is a problem is this itself, is the existence of this. Why does this exist? I think this exists because of a problem that Silverstone has made for itself. Now, if Silverstone wants to get in contact with me, I have my contact details in my About part of my channel page. Fire away and please, I'd love to open a dialogue, and I am not here to attack anyone. I'm here to clearly point out that this is a very big missed opportunity to make this so much better and just generally reduce the chance of things going wrong. So if you go to any, I don't know, design course in college, university or anything, you may have heard of the term or the acronym KISS, and it stands for Keep It Simple Stupid. And this isn't an aggressive thing. I'm not saying to Silverstone keep it simple stupid, but you generally, when you go about designing something, you think, is this the simplest iteration that I could possibly do? Does this make manufacturing easy? Does this make installation easy and use, general application? Is this the simplest way that I could possibly make this component? And clearly, by having an extra middleman step, it's not the simplest way they could have done it. Why do I need to have an extender on here? Why could this not just be extended anyway? It seems for every application, for any PCI Express, 16, 8, 4 slots that you want, or even 1, but I think that's a completely different old style connector, you would generally need this anyway. Why is it not just out of principle built onto this PCB angle connector and reinforced so this just doesn't happen? And then you can have that little side style catch that holds it in place, and then you get your finger down on the side here in front or back of this panel here and then hit that catch and pull it out. That just seems to me to be the most simple way of doing this. I don't know why would you add in something that adds, what is that, a fourth connection point? So you've got one to the motherboard, you've got one from that connector there, you've got and another one from there. So that's a third connection point. Why would you add a third connection point when you could have two? So there we go. That's pretty much my arguments laid out. This really, as far as I'm concerned, if people want to defend Silverstone because they're fanboys about all this stuff, I mean, there's no need to have 3 connectors over 2. There's no need to have this connector style particularly. This could be changed out, and this was a decision made by Silverstone, and they clearly didn't do their due diligence, potentially didn't do their due diligence, let's not be too harsh, about looking at all the different connector types available and the application itself. A lot of these things do come down to, well, once you've built it and had a bit of testing of it, you realise actually that's not quite as good as it could have been. But then maybe due to time constraints and design costs and retooling everything, they might have thought, you know what, we can't afford to do anything else, so we have to roll it out in its revision. So let's hope that in the next iteration or revision of this style of case, and if they have to go with some sort of angled adapted PCB for the PCI Express lanes, they choose something that is more simple, more elegant perhaps, but just generally more functional. And that's what I want out of this. I want a functional product with functional design, something that also looks good, is nice to have, but that's the main point. Be it functional and have it be looking nice. Is that a sentence? Could be. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say on it. I know this is a negative thing, but frankly, I can't move on with the case review otherwise, and it is an important point to look at. You know, if any manufacturer of anything is looking at their design and it's more complicated than it needs to be, then in an ideal world, that complication should be designed out. And this is a really simple way of designing out the complication. So anyway, thank you very much for checking out this video. I know this is very, very ranty, and you know, I don't want to do this all the time, but if I feel I have to, I will. And if I have the time to, because of disposable thing like this, I've already just discussed, I will. And finally, just to round this video off, there is a chance that I may not be able to get a replacement for this within maybe even 5 to 7 days. So, on the off chance that that happens, I may be able to get myself another case inbound. I haven't actually got any other cases around me to review. I've got like 5 lying around waiting to be sold off, but I've got nothing to review next. So, if you guys want to go to the video description, there's a poll that leads over to the Patreon page. It's a public poll, so anyone can vote on it. Tick as many boxes as you like. I'd like to know which cases out of the list that I've shown down there that you are interested in me reviewing. If you have any others you'd like to add to the list, let me know in the comments there or in the comments of this description, and I will look into them. And if you see any you like, then give it a tick, and I'll see if I can review them in order of the ones that people like the most, as it were. But due to some sort of delivery issues, I may not be able to access some of the cases, or maybe cost issues, I might not be able to access some of the cases that you suggest or ones in the list. But anyway, I'll try and review them as quickly as I can, but obviously these things take between like 2 or so weeks to do sometimes. And there is potential that I may be able to do a quick fire review on a very sort of cheap budget simple case, and I might be able to get all of my opinions rounded up and wrapped up into a 7-day period of recording, editing, scripting, narrating, and then producing. So let me know and I'll see if I can do something quick maybe in the meantime of waiting for this to come around. So thank you very much, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.